So this is the companion video to the 5-1 spot lace video, which is this pattern I've worked here. If you want to do this pattern in order to do the surface embroidery, watch that video first and work up a little bit of this, and then you'll be able to carry on and do the surface embroidery. So as you can see here, I've already done this one, and I've used a variegated yarn so that I got all these colour changes through there. And then I finished off by doing a green yarn to tie down. Another example I have is this one, just here. It's the same technique, but you can get lots of cool effects by using different colours and different yarns. I might have mentioned in the last video you could use ribbon, or you could use a glittery yarn, or you could use embroidery thread. Just depends what effect you want, but I'm going to show you how to do that because I think it's pretty cool. And of course you can play around yourself. You might come up with something different. That's how I come up with this kind of stuff, just by playing around. Sometimes I end up with something that I think, gee, that's ugly, and other times I end up with something that I think is pretty cool, like this. So I'm going to use variegated thread again, just because I like the effect. You can use whatever you like. And I need about 4 arm lengths of that to start with. You want a bit of length in it so that you don't have to keep going back and getting a new thread, but not so much length that it's going to bother you too much and get caught up and tangled. So we need a tapestry needle. Do you know this trick for threading a needle, especially with a thicker thread? You sit the thread over it like this, okay, over the end of the needle, grab it like this, pull the needle up hard, pinch it and pull it off. Now put the eye of the needle up to the bit where you've pinched and work it into there, and then you'll be able to pull it through. Hope that made sense. That was a bit impromptu. Okay, so we're going to start at the back of the work. One thing about this is, if you want the back of this to show, it's not going to look pretty. There's going to be bits, long floats and all of that. So this kind of technique is better for if you're just going to show the front side of the fabric rather than the back. So if you look at your floats on here, there's one row of floats here and there's a second row of floats here. Start on the second row and bring your needle in through the back. We want the needle to come up on the right hand side of that float. You'll see why in a minute. I don't need to knot this at the back. I mean, you can knot it if you want to, if you don't want to pull it, if you're worried about pulling it through, but I'm just going to hold it at the back for a sec. Now take the needle underneath these floats, but not into the fabric. This is why I call it surface embroidery, because we're just going under the floats. We're not actually stitching into the fabric. Okay, so that's our first part. Now we go over to the other row of floats on the right, and we go on the left hand side of those floats. Well, it doesn't really matter, it will come out on the left hand side anyway. You go under those floats just as you did for this one, without stitching into the fabric. Okay, pull that through there. Now we go over to this one. So what we're effectively doing is zigzagging up and down the floats. So over to this middle row again. Remember, just going under the floats, not stitching into the fabric. And pull that through. You see what we're doing now? Back over to this row on the right hand side and do the same again. Now over to this one, zigzag, yeah? Doing first one row of floats, then the other row of floats. Okay. Now, to hold this here, we are going to have to stitch it down into the fabric this time because we need to move to another section. So where that's gone through, just take a stitch straight down through the back. And we're going to come up over here. I'm going to come up on the right hand side of these floats, okay? So this is the row that we haven't touched yet. And this time, instead of coming up through the floats like we did here, we're going to go down because we're going to travel back down the row, and you'll see why. So underneath those floats without stitching into the fabric, okay? Now we're going to catch into this one. Straight down. Yep. Now remember we're zigzagging, so we have to go over to this one next. If I went straight down, I'd have a straight line. It wouldn't look the same. So down through these floats. And then zigzag back to this one. So although we're taking the thread through the float that's already got some thread through it, we're doing it on the opposite side, and it's going to catch on that side and it's going to hold on that side so they stay separate. Zigzag over to here. Yep, right down to the bottom. And there we are again. So you see the pattern starting to emerge. Now to get over to here, which is where we're going to go next, because it doesn't make sense for us to skip right back up to the top again. That's a waste of thread. We can go straight down through the fabric, yep, stitch into the fabric behind and bring up a stitch here, and then take that through these floats. So the 5-1 spot lace has sets of floats, two horizontal floats at a time. So you're going under the 2 floats, okay? Diagonally, zigzag. You getting the idea? It's not difficult. And if you use a kind of a special yarn or a variegated yarn like I am here, I think it just really gives a cool effect. Okay, so we're coming up and starting on this side of these floats now. Keep going. Once you get confident, you can speed it up and do 2 at once. If you don't have a tapestry needle, they're really cheap. Very user-friendly, not sharp. They're nice and thick, so simple to learn with if you haven't done any sort of embroidery before. Hope you're still following me what I'm doing here. If you're doing quite a bit of this, you like to be a bit quick at it. Okay. Take that down again because we've gotten to the top, and come out, up over at this one. So I've finished embroidering that section, but there are even more possibilities. If you think that that's not enough, or you want to go one step further and do something a bit different, there are a few things you could do. I could take a length of another colour and I could bring it through some of these that are above the surface like this. and I could either keep threading them through to make wavy lines, or I could do something like a little bow. A tiny little bow. Something like that. You could have a little row of bows if you wanted to. Another thing you could do is just bring up the needle from the back, and you could just run like a running stitch along the top. Say if I was going to do this, just this section as a border for something, and I wanted to kind of finish it off, I could go, alright, I'm going to do 2 threads down, 2 threads up, and weave my way across with the needle like that. Which would give me this kind of effect. I'll keep going with that so you can have a look. 2 down, 2 up, 2 up. Just work your way across like that, right across, and if it's sticking up like mine is, then you can just beat it down, and that's quite an interesting effect too, very simple. And another thing is, like I've done on these ones, you can do little tie downs. So for that we have to go down into the fabric, and I'll do mine over here so that you can see it better, just starting about in the middle of the floats, wherever you think the middle is, and back down on the other side, so stitching through the fabric for this one. Just gives you a little tie down. That almost looks like a bow as well. I'll do another one so you can see that. Okay, coming up where you think the middle is, and back down underneath the floats, stitching into the fabric to tie down. And that's kind of cute as well. Lots of things you can do. Have a play around, see what happens. I mean, it's only yarn, and these sort of techniques use small amounts of yarn, and if you don't like what you've done, you can just cut the pieces out, undo them. You know, it's no big deal. So I'll do one more. There we go. Hope you enjoy that, and if you come up with something exciting or new, I'd love to see it. I'd love to hear about it. Share your projects with me, share your comments, and I'll see you next time.